If you're anything like me, you've probably spent years stuck in a job or a career that drains your energy, leaving you nothing left to socialise, be active, or find a new direction in life. Looking back now, I wish I'd made changes to my life sooner, but I do know how hard it can be. When you've got no energy, finding a new direction and acting on that can be a near on impossible task. I often think about the lobster metaphor. If you put a lobster in boiling water, it will try to escape. But if you put it in room temperature water and bring it to a boil, it won't realise what's happening until it's too late. The same thing can happen in life. If it's really bad, the situation you're in, you try to change it. If it's just bad enough that you can tolerate, you stick with it until it completely destroys your mental well-being. All I'll say is, don't let it get too late. I always thought that when you left school, the choice at 16 years old in the UK is such a heavy choice to make, and it shapes the rest of your life. Now, how many 16-year-olds do you know that really know themselves enough to make it as such a big decision? I know I definitely wasn't ready. But looking back now, I don't think the issue is having to make the decision at 16. I think the issue is the lack of education and support after, if you find out you've made the wrong decision. If you've gone down the wrong path, the wrong career, it almost seems like an impossible task to change. The fact of the matter is, it's actually quite easy and you just need to know how. So what do you do when you feel stuck? Well, I'm going to share my story, my experiences, in the hope that just maybe one person who watches this video might be able to make some changes to improve their life as well. When I left school at 16, I went straight into an engineering apprenticeship. This was a path that was very much pushed by my school. You had the boys were told to go into engineering and the girls were told to go into childcare or hairdressing. Those were kind of the main options. They let you know of other things, but they were the main three paths that they would send pupils down. Mostly because they were probably the biggest growing industries at the time, but they didn't really tell you about any other options you might have. So as I left, 16 years old, I moved away from home and went into an engineering apprenticeship. Quite a prestigious one, and I always thought it was a great opportunity. I had done a 3-year apprenticeship and then worked with them for 3 years. It completely destroyed me. After the apprenticeship, I lost all motivation. I would struggle to have any energy to do anything after work or on weekends. It didn't help I was away from home, from my family, and it really destroyed me, to the point that I was getting depressed, and every weekend I would dread when Sunday would come around, knowing I had to return to work on Monday. It was not a good way to live. In that time, I overate from boredom, from depression, and I put on 3-4 stone of weight. I spent years in this rut, and I honestly thought there was no way to get out of it. But just know, if this sounds like anything that you feel when you're at work, you can make a change. It can get better, and you are not alone. So one day, I decided to make a change to my life. I had quite a bit of money saved up from doing nothing for years, realistically. And I got a text from my mum, and she had seen an advertisement for a snowboard instructor course in Canada. It was always a childhood dream of mine to go to Canada and to be a snowboard instructor. I remembered the times as a child having those lessons on snowboard and how cool I thought the instructors were. I always wanted to do it, and I thought, you know what? Life is not good here. Let's give it a go. So I did it. I bit the bullet and I travelled to Canada. A place called Fernie in the Rockies, to be precise, and looking back now, best decision I ever made. And this may not be for everyone, and it may not be what everyone needs to discover where they want to be. But I went out there, I spent 3 winters as a snowboard instructor, loving life. I had energy like a child again. I was enthusiastic, I was excited, and I couldn't get enough of what I was doing. I actually got Employee of the Month 1 month for working 31 straight days covering for 6 staff, and it didn't feel like work. Now that's a bit unique, a snowboard instructor. It's quite a fun job. But fast forward, after 3 years, or the pandemic hit, I pretty much lost my job overnight. My working holiday visa was running out, and going through to residency in Canada can be quite expensive and quite difficult, something that I wasn't really ready to commit to at the time. So I travelled back to the UK. It was a tough bullet to bite because I'd found a dream over there. And the hardest part was my then girlfriend, now wife, and I had to move back in with my parents during the lockdowns because we didn't have a house and we couldn't afford one at the time. So it definitely added some strain and made it very difficult. So when I returned from Canada, I decided I couldn't let it defeat me. I couldn't go back to how it was before. I looked at it and tried to pull from my experience from that. Now, you may not need to travel halfway across the world to get these decisions or these mindset changes, but for me, I look back and it gave me the hope that work doesn't have to destroy your mental well-being. It doesn't have to make you ill. So with experiencing that new way of life and that new mindset, I knew I couldn't have it go back to how it was before. There was just no way I could survive in engineering again. I'd tried various different companies before I went to Canada, and it had always ended up in the same situation. So, back living with my parents, I had to figure out my next move. I had pressures from my then girlfriend because we wanted to buy our first home together. So that added, that financial pressure, which might put people off making changes to their work or career because they have responsibilities. That didn't help, but there's definitely a way around it. It doesn't have to be a reason for you to stay in a role that makes you ill, makes you depressed, and makes you dread going to work. It's not an excuse for it. So when looking back on my life, I tried to decide what I enjoyed, what I did in my life that I enjoyed the most in the UK, so I can try and come up with a career. And thinking all the way back to school times, I remember of all subjects, I enjoyed maths. I know, crazy. And then in trying to buy this new house, our first home with my girlfriend at the time, now wife, I got quite heavily into personal finance because we need to save, we need to budget and figure out our personal finances to make it work. So with that being said, after lots of research, I decided that maybe accounting is something for me. And it doesn't sound anywhere near as fun as a snowball instructor, but given what my skills were, what I enjoyed, I thought it could be the career for me. So after deciding that, I took 5 steps to move into that career. Step 1, I researched everything, and I mean everything. I researched local companies, I researched salary expectations, I researched education, what courses I need to do, I researched tons of content on YouTube and Google, people already in the industry talking about it and figuring out whether it was something for me. Because it's easy to think, I'm good with maths, I like numbers, but does that translate to actually enjoying the job? It could be a very different role. So I researched a lot. Step 2, part of that research, I looked into what I needed to do to get into the role. Was it courses? Was it, for example, something more creative? If you want to get into photography, it might be less about courses and more about building a portfolio. However, for me, it was qualifications and education. More specifically, it was the courses provided by the AAT, which is an accounting body. So I looked into local courses near me, and online I found an online course which cost me about £500 at the time to do. So it was a little bit expensive, but I knew I needed to do it, right? The end result was fully worth it. So yeah, finding your route into that new career. What do you need to do to get there? Plan out the steps like you would anything else. Step 3, and arguably, in my scenario, the most important, cutting costs. If you're already in a career, like for me in engineering, I was already earning good money. To swap careers, I knew I'd need to take a pay cut. I'd be going into likely an entry-level role and probably lose a lot of my monthly income. You've got to come to terms with that. There might be some occasions where it doesn't work out like that, but for the majority of people changing careers, it will. So, part of that personal finance in saving to buy a home, we had to budget anyway. So we looked at everything we spent money on. We started sharing a car where we could. We cut back on takeaways. We tried to find free date nights instead of going to things like the movie theatre or out for dinner. We cut back everywhere we could. And in the first few months, we also tried to pay off any debts we had. So now we don't really do debt in our household, but at the time we had 2 car loans, which we got paid off as soon as possible, because we knew they would only hold us back. So step 3, get your finances under control. Now step 4, so now you've cut your costs, you've done a lot of research, and you've run through courses to get you into the industry. This could be quite soon after deciding to make the jump, or it could be for, like in my example, I was 6 months after I started to decide that I completed the first course I needed to do. Step 4 is getting ready for the job search. You need to update your CV, practice interviews with friends or family, look for roles in your local area or online if you can do a remote role. Step 5, you probably guessed it, apply. Get applying for jobs. Find them any entry level. If they would support further education and training, then that's even better. But search for a job and apply. Apply for a lot. For me, I spent probably about a month applying for roles before finding a role for me. But once you get in, I turned up to that first day nervous as anything. I didn't know what to expect. It was a new career, a new style of people to work with, a new industry. But you push through, and on that first day, I knew I'd made the right decision, and I did it. I changed my career, and little did I know, later down the line, it would have changed my life. So, changing careers. After doing it, now don't get me wrong, it was tough. You know, when I needed to pay bills, when I was going through the training to change careers, when I was doing that course in step 3, so I had to get another role in engineering, and it did sap the energy out of me. It was tough, but I pushed through. I studied 3 nights a week, midweek and 1 weekend day, to get the starting qualification and to get over the line into a role. It was very difficult. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It was hard, but I'm so glad I've done it. After changing careers, it has given me more energy, ambition, like the ambition and creativity you have as a child. It's given me the energy to start getting up earlier in the morning and going to the gym. I now go to the gym regularly. I've started running. I found a new passion in rock climbing. I go out mountain biking and cycling. My wife and I love going on active trips, going paddle boarding. And now I've had the energy and the passion to start this YouTube channel. I can't explain in words how much it has changed my life for the better. So if you are struggling and going through something similar to what I did, it can be better on the other side. You can make the change. It's not going to be easy, but once you do, you'll never look back. So again, my key takeaway, don't let it get too late.